Welcome back everyone, it's Sierra Nova here once again, and we're going to get into another Let's Talk Anime, this time for Fairy Tail. So let's go ahead and go through the first impressions, any dislikes and complaints along the way, and then we'll wrap up with turning points. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so let's go ahead and dive into the first impressions. Now, to be honest, I had high hopes for this anime when I first read the summary. Not only that, but based on the first few episodes, I felt like I was really going to enjoy this series. I mean, it did start off pretty strong. Not to mention that it was very lighthearted and had a noticeable amount of comfort and warmth to it. But somewhere along the line, unfortunately, I think it started to fall off for me, and I felt like I was losing interest. Now, I can't say the exact moment those feelings hit me for sure, but maybe it was around the Tenru Island arc. Whatever the case may be, Fairy Tail started to stray away from what initially brought me there in the first place. Okay, so one of the few complaints I have involves fan service. Now, I understand that the anime is ecchi, but I personally felt like it kept going overboard. Typically, I usually don't have a problem with it. I mean, I kinda expect it. I mean, this is shonen anime, and it's usually geared towards boys. But when it feels like it's constantly in my face, or it's all at questionable and weird times, it gets a bit annoying. The crazy thing is that I don't remember the fan service being that bad in the beginning. In fact, I think it just kinda started randomly ramping up as the arcs continued. Obviously, this may not be the same for everyone else, but I firmly believe in moderation. There are certain times when things can be too much or too little, but it's all about trying to find that balance. Anyway, here's a prime example of what I meant about annoying and questionable. Now, this moment at the Grand Magic Games was a moment that irritated me because I found this unnecessary. Here we're supposed to be seeing Lucy show out and do her best to win, yet she's made light of, and when Lucy summons one of her celestial spirits, it's Gemini in a towel.
We're doing the big one!
But we haven't practiced enough! We're not sure we can do it!
Don't worry, just transform into me!
You got it! Baby! Wow!
In my opinion, it really downplayed the moment. I was already getting kind of frustrated because I really wanted Lucy to have a memorable moment in the series. In the Fairy Tail community, I feel like Lucy gets overshadowed, and I feel like she's looked down upon and seen as weak. Sure, Lucy fights a bit differently than the others, considering she summons celestial spirits through her keys, but I think that's what makes her unique, not weak. Not to mention that Lucy has gotten to the point where she can use the powers of her summons while simultaneously fighting alongside them. One other complaint I have with Fairy Tail is the power of friendship, which is probably my main dislike about Fairy Tail. To be frank, I feel like it's overused and spammed so much that it becomes BS. Now, obviously, I understand the importance of relationships, and I get that the power of friendship or protecting your friends and the power of bonds is a thing. After all, that is a very common theme in anime, and I'm not mad at it. Like, I don't have a problem with the concept, I really like it a lot. However, what I don't like is the way it's over-delivered. It goes back to what I was saying about moderation, and I think it's fair to say that that applies here as well. To be honest, there were plenty of situations where Fairy Tail should have lost or faced some sort of memorable consequence, but instead they were able to turn the situation around off of pure will. An example of this is when Urza fought Asuma on Tenru Island, or when Lucy first fought Angel. Another example of this was when Natsu and Gajeel were teamed up to defeat Sting and Rogue. They were both getting pummeled and rocked, yet somehow Gajeel ends up wandering off somewhere, and Natsu is able to take them both on himself. Either Dragon Slayers aren't as strong as we thought they are, which is not the case, or Natsu is too strong. If Natsu has the ability to win no matter what, just because he doesn't want to fail his friends, then there's no need for consequences, and Natsu would never face any true hardship that would force him to evolve as a character. There's no need to fear death, loss, or anything horrible because they will always come up on top as long as they have each other. Now, I know this is kind of weird to say about an anime, but it's not exactly realistic. Give me more moments of Natsu facing someone overwhelmingly strong and then being emotionally crushed when he realizes he's too weak. Kind of like what happened with Gildarts. Let the Fairy Tail gang take a loss from time to time. Let them lose a fight from time to time. They don't have to win every single time. It actually makes things a bit more fun and entertaining when you can't predict it. I mean, I love Urza a lot, but Fairy Tail kind of took the fun out of her character a bit. Like, even though Fairy Tail does great with women and makes sure that they get screen time, Urza should not win simply because she's Urza. That was a BS line, and one that really disappointed me with Urza's character. Urza should have lost that fight against Kyoko. Maybe a few of you would debate with me on the other fights I listed, but this fight was horrendous. I don't even know if I pronounced her name right, but you gotta give me that one at least. Alright, so let's move on to my next complaint. This one has to do with Lazana'S Death. Simply put, I can't help but feel like there aren't really consequences in Fairy Tail. Once again, it's predictable, and you know there's gonna be a cop-out somehow. And while I hate to use Lazana'S Death as an example, I think it's a good one to use. Now personally, I didn't think this was necessary, and I really felt like it basically pooped on everything that Mira Jane and Elfman went through. We saw that Mira Jane's personality completely flipped, like she changed and stopped fighting because of this. And I mean, what was the point in bringing Lazana back when she's literally doing nothing? They brought her back just to utilize her for nothing at all, not even as a love interest. In my opinion, if Lazana was to be brought back for anything at all, it should have been as a love interest at the bare minimum. This kind of goes back to that lack of memorable consequence thing I mentioned earlier. There are very few deaths in Fairy Tail, and that's not an issue at all. The issue is when these characters are going to die or appear dead like Lazana and are brought back to do nothing. And in a show that feels as consequence-light as Fairy Tail, I feel like that does more harm than good. And what about that moment with the Guildmaster? That moment bothered me more than I thought it would. But just when I thought he was going to finally kick the bucket and sacrifice himself to help Fairy Tail prevail, even that moment was pooped on as well. Alright, so we're done with any dislikes or complaints about the series. I feel like I had a lot to say about Fairy Tail, and I feel like a good bit of it was negative, so let's shine some light on some positive aspects of the series. The first turning point I want to give Fairy Tail credit for would have to be how the women are written. The women have decent and great backstories. Now it may not matter much to others, but this is something that is really important to me. Like if the anime already contains great character development and great writing, then that's perfect. But if the women are written well, that's a huge bonus. Because for some reason, I don't think that's something that everyone can excel in. Let's look at Naruto for an example, as it's the first anime that comes to my mind that has this problem. Now let's be honest, Naruto excels in many things, but the women having decent development is not one of them. In fact, I'd argue it's Naruto's weakest point. Now the next turning point has to do with romantic relationships and love interest. Fairy Tail does a really good job with ships. Like you have a pretty good idea of who feels what for who, and it's pretty clear cut. There's no confusion on that end at least. Unlike Naruto, there are not a million different love triangles or anything messy like that. Of course, I'm exaggerating a bit, but I think y'all get the point. Anyway, I think that's pretty much all I have for now, at least all that comes to mind. Let me know what you think. Do you have anything that you dislike about Fairy Tail? Anything that bothers you? What about likes? Let me know down below. Thanks for tuning in. Sierra Nova is out.